Welcome to the Carrot and Stick podcast, a sales podcast where we get under the skin of all things sales management and motivation to understand what makes the wonderful world of sales truly tick. Today, we're speaking to Ciara, not Ciara, as I found out during this episode, who's a sales manager at Odro. We dig into her start in sales back at Enterprise Rent-A-Car all the way through to where she is today in a tech company after a brief little stint in recruitment, and find out what really drives her, the idea of safety and accountability in building a successful team, and also how forming relationships with individual contributors can really help you net that end sale with the CEO, MD, or other senior decision maker. We had such a good laugh. She finally understood that we're allowed to swear on podcasts as well. So I really hope you enjoy this episode. Let's get into it. Ciara, lovely to be speaking to you. I've got that right, haven't I? It's Ciara.
It's actually Ciara, but I do
Ciara,
get...
Right, I'm going for Ciara because I feel rude if I say it the wrong way. It's
Well,
when people,
okay.
if ever I go to America, people are always like, dairy? And I'm just like, no, it's dairy. It's not dairy, like from a cow. It's dairy. No one ever seems to get that.
I know,
So-
I've had Shakira before, so to be fair, you done well. You done okay.
Cool name. All right, then, cool. We'll go with Ciara. That's fine by me. Cool. So I said before we started recording as well, one thing I'm really keen to understand first and foremost is your title, sales manager. I kind of joked it's one of the more common things that you'll see. It can mean you're a senior salesperson. It can mean you're managing a sales team. It can mean something completely different altogether. So
Yeah.
at Odro specifically, what is a sales manager? What do they do? What are they responsible for?
So my role is actually, so I manage like the SMB and lower mid-market team. So what that means is that I'm responsible for those prospects who we're reaching out to, who we're demoing the product, and who we're ultimately trying to bring on as revenue customers. The way this team is actually split itself, we then will have a mid-market manager and then an enterprise manager as well, who will do the exact same for each division. So yeah, I think that it can definitely mean different things in different businesses, but in Odro, we kind of split it out amongst the three divisions, and each division head then looks after that that type of customer.
Got it. And so you managing all three of those divisions?
So I manage the SMB and lower mid-market.
Right, sorry, then they've got one that manages the enterprise side of things as well. Cool.
Yeah.
So how do people report to you directly then?
Like report to me.
Yeah.
So I have got like AEs who are doing obviously then the demos, who are, obviously doing the bit business development. They're doing the demo call, and then obviously the closing side of things. So I manage that through them.
Got it. And how many of them are there?
So at the minute there is 2.
Got it, 2. And then do you also manage SDRs as well?
So no, my role has changed since I first did the SDR role, and now I moved into actually just the closing side.
Got it. Exciting. Cool. So we've got a lot we can learn then, because you spent 2 years, as you say, as an SDR team lead as well. So there's some stuff we can learn from that, but also talk more about the new role as well.
Yeah.
One thing I'd be really keen to ask out the gate straight away is, what's the main difference between the two roles when it comes more to, obviously there's a lot of differences in terms of the responsibilities of the role, but when it comes around to management style, the kind of people you're managing, what are you seeing as the main differences? And not at all trying to say things like, oh, SDRs are early in their career, so there's a lot more to it. More trying to understand what differences do you see and how you've had to change yourself maybe as a manager.
Yeah, I think probably myself, I was very much focused on opportunities. So it was very, very much in the SDR side of things. It was always just about, right, what can we do creatively? What can we do to stand out? How do we ensure that we're the people that, our prospects spend time with over everybody else? And, it was constantly making that into a game, constantly making everybody think outside the box and be creative. So it was very, very it was quite intense, I would say, when you were doing the SDR team lead. You had to always be on it. You had to always be making the team super motivated about what they were doing, and kind of put games and things like that into the day-to-day role. I think the difference probably now with moving into the managing AEs is actually it's a longer sales process, and you're involved in a lot more. So actually, getting involved in the demo side, that was something that I hadn't done for a long time. So actually listening to those sorts of things, understanding actually how those sales processes work, and then making sure that we, put things in place to actually make sure that the guys know, in terms of the closing side of things, how we can actually get there quicker, faster, and all that.
Interesting, really interesting. It's kind of the difference between the transactional side of things in the world of SDRing and the more relationship side of things in the world of AEing, right?
Totally, totally. Yeah, I think
Awesome.
like with the AE side of things, like it is about nurturing that the whole way through the sales process. You know, you have to build that relationship from the beginning in the SDR, but then actually taking that right through is super important to keep that relationship going, because there's so many things that can happen. Competitors can get involved, other, you know, rec tech businesses can reach out, and then they see that as a bigger pain or a bigger problem. You need to make sure that you are, you know, you've got the best relationship.
Interesting. Cool. Now, let's imagine a world. Well, not really imagine a world as such. Then, if I went back, let's actually imagine a world, because I won't go and do it. If I went and spoke to your previous team, your current team, and said to them, "What kind of boss is she?" What do you think they'd say? What's your style?
I'd probably say like I have a balance of both. Like, big thing for me is like I like to have fun. So I very much like to enjoy what I do. I don't take it too seriously. Like, I'll very much always laugh at myself. Like, if I get somebody writing back to me, you know, an email or hanging up on the phone at me, I'll very much make a noise about that and show people that, like, look, this happens, like, and almost laugh it off. So I definitely would say that they would probably say that I would do that, because I always want to make sure that they don't feel it's just them. I'd say, the other thing is that I do like accountability. Very, very important. Like, I think for me, when I try and make a plan with a, you know, a team member, it's we make it together, so that it's so much easier then to have that conversation with that team member. You know, if they haven't done something, or they haven't you know, hit or achieved that, you know, we created this together, so what's changed since we last had that last conversation? So I'd probably say it'd be a mix of both of those.
Interesting. There was a book I got given. I went to dinner when I was out in Austin for an event called SaaS Doc, where a bunch of SaaS businesses all get together.
Yeah.
And I got given a book there called The Culture Code by an investor, and it was a really good read. And actually, what they were saying in there, the number one requirement to start a high-performing team is safety. And that first point that you kind of touched on is kind of showing, oh, these things happen. It's not like a bad thing if this happens, if something goes wrong, or someone hangs up on you, or you get something wrong. It's okay. You can laugh at yourself a little bit. That is kind of creating that level of safety. So it sounds like already you've got that kind of core element in there, along with, hey, here are the expectations we've got. We're all accountable for it. So you're kind of following through on that full stack of leadership there in a way, which is fantastic. And I guess out of curiosity, how are you led? Because I know that Donna, for example, we spoke to her yesterday to get an episode done for this as well. How do you view her leadership style? How do you like to be managed?
Well, obviously Donna has obviously only been in the business now for 2 or 3 months, but already has come in and made such an impact, like in terms of like you know, individually and across the business. I think in terms of the way she leads, it's very much by, you know, she very much wants to lead by example. She'll bring you into conversations and actually help you in terms of like showcasing how she would do it, but then also letting you have a go at it yourself. I think sometimes when it's so easy as a manager, you know, you can probably get there faster to get the decision that you want, but actually in the long run, it's actually really bad on that employee, but also bad on you in terms of your time management, because you're going to be pulled into more and more of these conversations or demos because actually they don't know how to do it. So I think she does a really nice job of actually getting the blend of that, bringing you into it, but also stepping away and letting you actually lead and have control of that conversation as well. So yeah.
Interesting. And to go right back to kind of the raw layer of all of this, what inspires you? Why are you in sales? What first got you into that world? What's kept you in it the whole way through?
Yeah, it's actually like, I know people always say they fall into sales or recruitment, and you know, like that is literally always the tagline that people say, but genuinely I did, like, I was never supposed to do sales. I was always supposed to do musical theatre, had like done musical theatre all my life, had like done all these auditions. And then I kind of realized it wasn't the right move and decided to go down and do like a business degree, which was so random. Everybody was literally like, what is she doing? And then I applied during my uni degree, I applied for a year in the industry, which was with Enterprise Rent-A-Car. And it was probably the best decision I ever had in terms of what like a role in business, or, you know, what you could be doing, because it it gave me so much exposure to so many different things. So I had exposure to sales, I had exposure to customer service, marketing, like running your own business, cost control. Like you literally managed your own mini business or branches or areas depending on how far you got. And it taught me so much about work ethic. It taught me so much about actually, you only get in, I'm so bad at saying those sayings, but you only get out as much as you put in type of thing.
Yeah.
I then kind of found a love of like sales within that role. And that's kind of how I then fell into actually then going down the more sales route instead of actually like the managing a business type of thing.
Amazing. It sounds like an MBA packed into a job there, essentially, with enterprise.
Yeah, it was insane. Anyone who knows of enterprise, literally, like the reviews are shocking in the sense of like the management trainee program. I think the retention rate is probably about 20% on that, but actually I loved it. Like it was one of the best experiences I've ever done. And anytime I speak to anyone who reaches out about doing it, I'm like, go for it, because honestly the experience you will have and what it'll teach you. When I first went into recruitment, I was like, why are people saying they're stressed? Because I was like, I used to work till like 12 o'clock at night, like cleaning cars in a suit, so I was like, this is a breeze.
It's really interesting, and you'll appreciate this actually now being on the software sales side of things. It's normally when it comes around to hiring people, we always say if we're hiring someone who's had like a real grafty sales job, so if they've worked at a car dealership, if they've worked in recruitment, for example, if they've slammed 200 calls a day in a call center, they come into a software company where normally expectations are 60 to 80 calls a day, where it's a little bit more chilled out. The kind of culture is a lot more friendly, I'd go as far as saying. A lot of them look around and just go, well, this is pretty chilled out actually. I've got a good deal going on here. I need to really amp it up and make sure I'm delivering the numbers right. Whereas some come in completely fresh and go, oh my God, this is horrible. I have to speak to people cold. And it is so fascinating, I think, seeing the totally different ends of the spectrum. Yeah.
Totally. I totally agree. I think like whenever I first came in, I was like, oh my God, like this is don't get me wrong, it's challenging. It's, there's so much, and like, yes, there's days where I'm totally stressed, and yes, there's days where it's really, really hard. But I think that, that sort of experience in that type of environment is something that I'll never forget. It's kind of with me now.
So there's tip number one for anyone wanting to get into sales then. Go and find yourself a real hard graft job and really push at it, right? That's what I'm hearing there. Talk to yourself for a year or so and then try and work in a software company afterwards. I mean, while we're on the topic here, because we're talking about moving between industries and hiring and new people kind of finding a sales role, what do you look for when you hire salespeople? So what traits do you look for? Is there anything particular that you think, that really stands out as a difference maker? What is it that you specifically like?
Yeah, I think when I was hiring for SDRs, like the biggest thing for me was personality. Like I really wanted people, I think, it's so important. Like when I first fell into this, like I tried to be somebody else, like, when I tried to be like what everybody else was doing and being like, they were really successful. So I was like, oh, I'll try that. And actually I realized like that it didn't work. So I realized like personality is like being yourself, putting, everything that you do. That's why people are friends with you. That's why people, want to talk to you. So that's really, really important. I think resilience, again, this job is really, really tough. You get far more no's, as everyone says, than you do ever get yeses. So you have to have that hard, thick skin. You have to be able to get hung up on, 20, 30 times within a day, and that be okay and move on to the next one. So I think those are really, really important in terms of when you're actually looking at somebody.
I want to unpack that piece around resilience, because this could be a really interesting kind of like tactical bit of like takeaway that someone takes from listening to this as well. Salespeople fundamentally are very, very good at interviewing. They're very good at selling themselves. They're very good at saying, money super motivates me. I'm really ambitious. I'm really competitive. I'm super resilient. How do you then prove it? Because they say these things, but then sometimes some will start the job and they'll get stage fright and completely freeze up. So how do you actively dig into and test that someone really is truly resilient? Because normally you'd say, ask this question. Again, anyone can fake the answer to a question. So how do you go that layer deeper?
Yeah, I think it's really hard because, like, look, I'm not going to sit here and say I haven't made a mistake in hiring. Like, I have.
Everyone has. Anyone says I've never got it wrong in hiring, I won't believe them.
I know, absolutely. I think, like, the thing for me and probably what I've learned is whenever I want the type of person that it's like the last day of the month, it's the last day of the quarter, that, you know, if you need something, that they're going to run through walls for you. They're going to, you know, they're going to have your back and absolutely, you know, be there with you to the very bitter end. So I think, like, you know, I think it's asking questions around that, in terms of, like, I don't really like those sort of, you know, in interviewing, I like to be a lot more informal than actually, you know, can you tell me about a time when you did this, or can you blah, 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 because I actually don't think you get the real person. It's actually about digging into, like, you know, right, like when everything's kind of hit, everything's kind of went downhill, and, you know, everything's
You can't
not
say
good.
when shit hits the fan, it's fine.
I know, I literally was going to say that, and I was like, can I or can I not?
Well, Donna dropped the F-bomb yesterday, so I'm sure you can say shit. It's not a
Fuck
problem.
it.
Exactly.
So yeah, when shit hits the fan, like,
That's
you
a clip for
really
social media later, I'll tell you that much.
but you want somebody who's going to kind of be there and, like, kind of talk to you about that sort of thing. I think, like, one of the best kind of question I ever got, that I stole from an interviewer once, was he asked me what the difference was between a challenging day and a hard day. And I remember kind of sitting there thinking, like, I was on the spot, like, oh my God, what do I say? How do I answer this? But actually, like, when I look back, like, you know, everybody has hard days. Every walk of life that you go into, in terms of any job, any role that you're going to work, it's going to be hard, it's going to be difficult. But challenging is actually where you're learning. That's when you're actually growing as a, you know, an individual, or as a leader, or as a salesperson, or whatever it may be. And that's the type, you know, that's the type of person that you want. So that really kind of stuck with me, is to actually think about those types of questions that you'll get the most out of people, because that's when you see the real them.
I love that, and I've got to say, to my own, good artists copy and great artists steal. I'm pretty sure now stealing that off you. You taking it from someone else, I'm now taking it from you as well. That's a really good question. My favorite interview question that I ask, actually, is one of those really obscure ones that will get posted on Twitter. Like, why do they ask this?
I know.
But my ask is always, how many individual fries does an average McDonald's sell in a day? And some people just go, what? And I'm just like, you've already answered the question there, and
I
telling me how you
know.
reacted to it. The best response we've had to that, and the reason why I asked the question, is because it's a challenging question, right? You've never come across that problem before in your life, so there's nothing in your brain that goes, oh, I've dealt with that, answer this way. It breaks someone out of the mold of answering questions in a very kind of formulaic way. And the best answer I've had to it actually is our best performing SDR, so go figure, right?
Yeah.
He heard the question, then kind of sat there for 5 seconds and was like, well, if we assume this many people go in, and let's assume breakfast is between these hours, and he listed all these assumptions that had gone through in his head, and then gave a number. And I forget if his number was close or not. Our SDR manager had actually gone away and looked at how many potatoes are shipped around the UK across McDonald's, divided it by the number of McDonald's, and therefore found an answer, which is about 73,000 or something like that. If you interview with us and say 73,000, if you listen to this, I will call you out on this. But he'd figured out the exact answer, but it was just the approach he'd taken to a new situation, and showed how he processes a new challenge, which for me was a real good way of evidencing there and then, how are you going to respond to something new? And I love trying to think of all these different situations you can put people in, that there's no matter how much preparation you do, it will still catch you off guard, and you're forced to show the real you, the problem solving you, rather than the one that you claim is a problem solving version of you, right?
Yeah, and I think, like, that, like, exactly, like, now he's one of your best performing SDRs because he's able to adapt, and that is the biggest thing. And, you know, when you're prospecting, when you're BDing, when you're on the phone, you meet and you hear the most weird and wonderful people all the time. You need to be able to play different roles. You need to be able to, you know, think on your feet, and, you know, and sometimes come up with the most weird and wonderful answers.
Yeah, absolutely.
To kind of get through.
I mean, he gets told no and just keeps... I'll have to send you some of his calls. Honestly, the guy terrifies you, that he gets told no about 5 times and he's still got them on the phone and eventually gets a demo. I'm just like, how
I love it.
Like, how I could see it in my head, like, I'd give up here, these people will give up there, that SCR will give up here, but he just keeps going. It's terrifying.
I love it.
That resilience is just something else. And he used to work at BT as like a sales agent for, like, when people call up and like, blah, 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 is it, do you want to buy an iPad? And they're like, no. His job is to keep trying to push for that. So
Yeah.
it's, again, a really interesting background where I wouldn't have put it down as like a hard sales job in a sense. I've got no doubt it was tough dealing with customers that sometimes were calling you really pissed off, to be honest. But yeah, a really interesting little background there. A little bit of insight into our team, I guess. So speaking of team, I want to hear some stories. Give me the proudest moment you've had. Let's do 2 stories. One, your proudest as a salesperson. A look back, it's a deal you won, it's a moment you had, an interaction, whatever it might be. And then your proudest as a team manager.
So my proudest individually, I I think my proudest individually is actually, it's probably quite a weird one in the sense of, so when I first came into Odro, I came in as a client engagement manager, which was kind of a fancy title for an AE, and I actually, see trying to demo, trying to effective question, object and handle, listen, which is probably the most important part. See trying to do all those things together. As much as people say women can multitask, I couldn't. I'm just going to put it right there. I absolutely could not. And I failed. I couldn't do it. And I was really lucky that actually I did work in Odro, at that point, and they seen something in me. And, they noticed straight away that I gave a shit. I absolutely cared about what I was doing, and there was nothing going to stop me from making this to be a success. And don't get me wrong, Ryan and Dougie probably seen me ugly cry like Kim Kardashian tears. I did countless times, God love them, but they also noticed that, in the business development side, that's where I really, really kind of excelled, and that's where I'd done really, really well. And, that's why I was able to then become an SDR, learn that, create that whole department, change the way in which Odro actually looked at sales and looked at prospecting. But then kind of like the last couple of months or 6 months, I went kind of full circle, and I went back into then doing that AE role and then actually managing the team. And, for me, having that was really tough, in terms of internally and, myself and how other people would view that going from AE to SDR, because let's be honest, that's how people do view it. I don't. I'm the biggest champion of SDRs because I just think they are incredible. I think that people who are able to have that, no constantly, and able to constantly, just get back on top. But let's be honest, that is the way people do see it. So for me, going from AE to SDR, right back to AE to then managing the team, like it was like full circle, and I think that for me is definitely something that I'll never forget, and I'm really proud that I was able to do that.
Amazing, cool. And then give me the one about the team management side of things then.
So the team side of things, I think probably last quarter, it was like my first time managing the team. And I had like individual targets, because at this point, like, I was still kind of like learning, myself kind of the back to it, but also actually bringing the team on it. And it was that quarter we like excelled all of our targets individually and also as a team. So it was a massive, like, I literally at the end of that last day, I had like was nearly like singing around the office. Like, I was just delighted. Like, everybody was in such great form, and it was just such a, like, we did it together. We started that together as like nobody had kind of done those roles before, including myself. So to actually learn together, do it together, and then win together, there was just no better feeling.
And I've got to ask, because I'm sure someone listening will be screaming at me to ask the question, what's the secret sauce? We all know markets are a little bit tougher this year. For example, Q1 and Q2 versus 22, even 21 have been definitely slower and harder, but here you guys are hitting targets. What's in the Odro secret sauce? What's Ryan feeding you?
I think it comes down to like a couple of things. I think, like, for me, it's about being creative and thinking outside the box. Like, it all starts with prospecting, in terms of BD. So for me, like, we're not just coming up against video technology anymore, or or the likes of like Loom or Vidyard or anything like that. We're coming up against like you guys. We're coming up against,
fighting for the same budgets, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so you're coming up with, everybody is literally fighting for time and budget. So you need to make sure what you're doing and what you're saying is having more impact than everybody else. So you need to be creative. You need to think out of the box, and you need to get those people to like you. So I think that's number one. And I think probably the second thing is like being relentless. Like, I have been told probably too many times that I am like, Ciara, for God's sake, like, I've seen you here, you've done this, but people laugh about it because you put humor in it, you have a laugh with it, you have a joke with it, and I think people really do buy into that. But I think most people, like, anyone that reaches out to me and asks me, like, for advice or help, like, they always say, oh yeah, but I kind of stopped after maybe like the third or fourth time. And I'm like, just keep going, keep asking those questions, like, keep, if they're not ready right now, you will, if you stay front of mind and you stay, you show who you are, they will come back to you when they are ready to buy. So I think, like, it's like nurturing relationships, like the amount of people that, for example, from my SDR days that came back to me in that last quarter, you know, when they seen I had been promoted and blah, 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 and all that stuff, actually then they were the people who helped me actually get to hit those targets and achieve those goals. So I think that's really important.
Professional persistence is a term that I use an awful lot. Like outside of the business world, like I commentate on video games, as some might have seen on LinkedIn. And in there, no one in that world reaches out for relationships. It is very bizarre.
Really?
I can shoot someone an email and just speak to them and say, hey, look, I know you guys aren't looking for new people to work with right now. Just wanted to say I'll introduce myself. One day I'd love to have the conversation. 3 months later saying, hey, just checking in again, making sure things are okay. Love this recent event that you guys did. If there's room for us to work together in the future, I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah.
And six months, 9 months, even 12 down the line, they're knocking on your door saying, hey, actually, we've got this event coming up. Do you want to come and get involved?
Totally. Yeah.
And no one else does it. Everyone else sits there, posts their show reel on Twitter, and it's like, hey, here's what I do. No one's got time to go and look at your Twitter. It's like expecting them to come to you when they start thinking about video tech if you haven't spoke to them or maintain that relationship, right?
Yeah.
And in a way, it's kind of like demand generation is this really hot word at the minute, right? In terms of marketing, it's about providing all this content. So when they do start thinking, hey, I really want an analytics platform. Hey, I really want a video provider. You are the one that comes to mind. In a way, what you're talking about is doing demand generation, but in a sales sense is making sure you're always in their minds. So when they start thinking about the problem, you're the first person they reach out to, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I actually don't even want them to reach out to Odro. I want them to reach out to me because I want them to have that connection with me. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think like it's so important that, you know, as well, like some people can get that no, right? And then they think, oh, that's not done. And I'm like, no, go multi-thread that. Go and speak to somebody else. Get them to become your friend. Get that consultant. Go, like there's something so powerful about going to consultants, speaking to them, understanding what they're doing on a day-to-day, what's really annoying them, what's really pissing them off, what they really enjoy, and then going to that CEO or that CFO or whoever it is your, you know, decision maker, and actually saying, listen, I spoke to Derry and he said X, Y, and Z. Do you, like you see what some of them say? Like they're literally like, you can almost hear them go like, shit. Like I didn't know that. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like, yes. And see when they do that, like
it's that terrifying moment when this person who's speaking to you knows more about your business than you do. That's when the oh shit moment really hits.
Yeah. And you build so much credibility because you can be like, look, I've done my research, I've done this, like now it's your time to give me, you know, 10-15 minutes to show you how we can help solve these things.
No, I love that. Really interesting. What's next for you? What's keeping you going? What's keeping you on the drive as a salesperson as well? Where do you want to get to in your career? Have you got a goal that you're aiming for, or is it just I'm here for the ride and I'm loving it? Because that seems to be my general state of existence is I'm loving the ride, let's keep going.
Yeah, just see where it goes.
Yeah, exactly, I love it. Just don't tell investors, they don't like that.
Yeah. I'm just winging it, mate. I think for me, like, I've always been really driven. I always want the next thing. So kind of how even like the sales manager role came about, I have never been afraid to like not ask for more. Like I've always knocked on, like Ryan probably hates me for it, but I've always knocked on the door asking for that next pay rise, asking for how I can earn more bonus. And that was actually how coming back to the sales role and doing the full cycle and sales manager role came about, was actually getting a revenue target under my name and my responsibility, and then being able to actually account for more. So you know, I want more than just doing what I'm doing just now. I'd love to run like a full sales team, and I'd love to become director. I'd love to, you know, be VP of something, you know. I know I have a lot more to learn. I'm not naive in that. Like I have a lot more experience to have. I have a lot of highs and lows to go through, but you know, I'm willing to put that in. I'm willing to, you know, absolutely like give my all and run at it. And I want to get to the top, wherever the top is.
I love that. And it's a really mature viewpoint to hold as well, I think, where you clock it's not something you can just do in the space of like 2 years, for example. Like we speak to some people, and even when we're interviewing them, that were just like, oh, you know, what are your aspirations for the next 5 years? They're like, oh, well, inside 2 or 3 years, I'd like to be like VP sales, running a team of like 20 or 30 people. And we're just like, okay, like bold. Yeah, you haven't even been an SDR yet, and you want to get to that stage in 3 years. Like, I don't think that's going to happen, mate, to be honest with you. I admire the drive, and I think it's a really interesting kind of change in the world, where I've had this conversation a few times now, where you look at social media kind of gives you the impression that you can get everything you want now. It's very immediate. Feedback is immediate. Everything's there in front of you. It takes 2 or 3 seconds to get what you want. Whereas then you look at a career and people are saying, hey, you're going to have to work 15 to 20 years to get to where you want. And a lot of younger people are just like, yeah, screw that. That's not for me. I want to be at the top right now. You know, tomorrow I want to be there. And it is a really interesting kind of problem, I think, that's got to be solved in terms of that communication between generations at some point. But it feels like at least you've got that right understanding of it is kind of a builder, right? It's not like a tomorrow situation.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think, though, you're 100% like spot on there. Like it needs to be communicated that way. You know, I think there's so many times where like managers or leaders, like they almost get so excited as well on the build up of their journey and the journey and the vision of the company that they can almost say like, yes, this is going to happen and this could happen if you do this, and this. But actually, by being more honest with people and actually saying like, hey, like, look, I actually don't know where, you know, this could go. It could have X, Y, Z avenue, but let's put in place plans and conversations and catch-ups and, you know, points where we check in to actually talk about your development is so much more important. And actually, as an employee, I really respect it because actually there's so many different ways where your career can go. It's all on you to actually get it there. And that's where I think, you know, again, it helps in terms of driving you forward.
You touched on another point that I'd love to ask about. How do you manage those kind of conversations? Dig me into a little bit more into your kind of tactical operating cadence you have with your team. How often are you having one-to-ones with them? How often are you talking about progression and development? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so we do weekly one-to-one. So that's where it's all about the like team in terms of like them as people. Like I try and like focus more on like how they are, like how they're actually getting on. Like, because I think, you know, as that safety point, sorry, you mentioned earlier, like I want my team to be able to come to me with anything. I'm not saying I want them to like come and, you know, I'll be their agony aunt, you know, sitting here like listening to all the stories, but I definitely want, like, if something's going on at home, I want to know so that I can help and support them and put things in place that's actually going to help them still be like achievable and achieve things at work. Because let's be honest, happy employees come whenever they're earning, you know, and they're doing well in work. So we do that on a weekly basis. I also do like call and demo reviews because I think, again, it's so easy. People can sit and think, oh, I've got a demo to close ratio of X, or I've, you know, my conversion rate in calls is this, right? But actually, if you see for 1 week or even a couple of days, you do not listen to your calls or you do not listen to your demos back, you're going back and there's everybody else in all those other different companies and including the company that you're working who are actually going ahead of you. So I think that's super important. Like feedback, you know, we sit at the table like we do. I'm in most days. By choice, and the team are in most days as well. I think that, you know, feedback is something that I think people are quite scared of. Managers are also quite afraid to give it because they don't want to upset people. Again, when I worked in enterprise, oh my God, literally it was feedback constantly all day long. Like it was literally like whether you wanted it or not, you were getting it. But actually it made me so, like, it just is like, it just kind of flows over me now. I'm just like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, okay, right, I'll do that. Like, it just, I know exactly, it's just somebody trying to help me. So I very much try and build that. You know, if people are on phones, let's all give each other that all the time, because you can't, as a player manager, it's really, really hard because you still have your own target to hit, but you also need to be there to support your team. But you also have to give them that speed, like give yourself as well that space that they know that they have to do part of that themselves, and they have to give you that time to also go and, you know, hit your goals and your targets as well. So I think, yeah, if you're lucky enough to work in a, you know, a team where you're all in the office together, or say you do online calls if it's remote, you know, giving that constant feedback is super important because it allows you to not take time out of your day, go and actually spend an hour to talk about X, Y, or Z. You can just do it on the spot.
Interesting. Yeah, I feel like one of those leaders is just really good at regurgitating sayings at this point and then telling stories about them. But one of my favorite sayings is that feedback is a gift. I think it was Google maybe it was Apple who say this, but when you hear it, it's like feedback is a gift. It's like, yeah, okay, whatever, old man. That's what it sounds like. Sure. When you actually understand a little bit more about what they mean by it is, you know, someone's actively putting themselves into a very uncomfortable spot and they're kind of exposing themselves and essentially coming across offensively and saying, hey, I've got some feedback for you. And whether you agree with the feedback or not, whether you perceive it as being unjust or maybe just wrong, you can choose to ignore it, but it is a gift that someone's given to you by giving you their time, their consideration, their thoughts to actually say to you, hey, here's something I've observed, and either here's an idea on how you can improve it, or here's something you might want to look a little bit further into. It is just that, a gift, and it's something we're really trying to deploy internally at the minute. Is when it comes around to so we have like weekly one-to-ones where it's more operational. It's how are you, then it's okay, cool, let's talk about what you're working on at the minute, where do you need help, what problems are there. Monthly is much more about them in the business. And what we started doing in the last couple of months is including at least 3 bits of 360 feedback from others in the team they work with. So a few days before a one-to-one, we go out to those they work with and say, hey, I've got, for example, Alex is my head of product. I'm like, hey, I've got Alex's one-to-one in a few days. You work with him a lot. Can you tell me where he's pleased you the last month, where he hasn't pleased you very much, what ideas you got for him to improve, and any notes you'd like to pass on to him? That is arguably the most valuable part of any one-to-one for someone. And I'm trying to kind of build a pyramid here where it's coming out each month in their one-to-ones where they're actively getting the 360 from a manager. And I'm going to try and build it up where actually it's being given direct. So I'm asking someone, hey, if you've got any 360 feedback, please, can you go and give it to that person directly? I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And then try and get that just like happening ad hoc day to day without needing prompts as well. Yeah. Those are kind of the 3 layers we're now trying to build through. So feedback as a gift is flowing through the organization constantly. But it is a bit of a shift and you have to kind of work your way through. But I'm with you, like feedback is so valuable to give, I think, but it's very hard for some to take unless they've really got that slow introduction to it as well.
Yeah. And I think, I love that because I think, even like, I think people always see feedback as negative, right?
No, it can be positive.
Absolutely. Like they don't see it as like, they don't see it as actually, as you say, like as a way that you could be actually going and congratulating someone like, look, I needed your help with a customer that you brought on. It was nothing to do with you, but you had a really good relationship with them. So thanks so much for getting back in touch. You were the right person for that job, right? It may not be your job title. It may not be in your job description, but you were the right person to deal with that customer. I think like, people see it as such a negative and actually, see building that. I think that it'll now become almost second nature to all of your team, that you will just all be doing it constantly.
Exactly.
Which is lovely.
That's what we're trying to roll out. Yeah. It's one of those as well where I think as managers, like you think, oh, saying thank you is cool and all, but like, it's just a thank you. It's not like a gift. Unless I'm giving a gift, I don't want to say thank you that much to someone.
Yeah.
Whereas I've realized more and more, like, I forget who it was that told me a story the other day. One of my managers said, oh, I kind of like took the practice of saying thank you for more things. I just said thank you to someone for something they'd done at work. And they told someone else in the team who then fed back to the manager. Was like, afterwards they got off the call, they were literally bouncing around the room that they've been valued for their work.
Exactly.
And it is such a simple thing just to say, thank you for the way you handled that call, or thank you for taking that on for me. Like, I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
I had one of my CSMs trying to chase down someone who hadn't paid us for a few months, for example, and they'd really gone to the wire of like, calling around the office, trying to get through to everyone who worked there, trying to get through to this MD, emailing them, and they couldn't get there. And she said, look, I've tried, but I really can't get them. And I said, look, honestly, I just really appreciate you trying. Thank you so much for doing that. Yeah. And that just lit up the rest of their day.
I know.
It's really, really simple. It's not even hard to do.
I know.
And to the stage it feels a bit over-exaggerated, but it's not. Just saying, I genuinely really appreciate that you tried that for me. Thank you. Yeah. It means so much.
Yeah, I know. And it means so much to that person and so little effort for you. So like, why do we not do it more?
Exactly that. Like, if you're worried about someone getting an overinflated idea, like saying, oh, they keep saying thank you, therefore I'm absolutely incredible. If they are incredible, then keep on saying thank you.
Keep doing it. Exactly. They're going to be even more incredible.
Exactly. No bad comes from it at all. So that's a real big one that I really like the idea of. We are coming up towards time, by the way. I'd love to get from you your top 3 bits of advice as a manager on how to inspire or motivate a team.
Okay. Good.
It can be a particular game that you used to run as an SDR team lead. It can be a small little ritual that you've got. It can be anything.
So my top 3.
Or we'll say 3 of your top whatever you want. Just choose 3 basically. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
I'm not gonna like interrogate you after this few rankings just to check they were definitely the top 3.
Yeah, I know.
Just give me 3 of your favourites.
Is she lying? So I think my top 3 in terms of like rituals, like I think always getting like the team together, whether that's if you work remotely, if it's online, whether it's if you work, in the office, like getting everybody together at some point, whether that's on a weekly, whether that's, on a daily, whatever it kind of works for you guys. I think always having that time to kind of just be you guys as a group, because if you build like a foundation of like friendship and like, everybody kind of working to get together. You create really good behaviors, you create really good sharing processes, practices. You don't have that relationship of SDR versus AE. It's actually like a team effort. And I think culturally it also helps in terms of, the wider business as well. So I think that's super important. I think again, like allowing your team to like be themselves. So like be who they want to be. Like giving them the autonomy to go and test and try different things. Like I know whenever I was doing it, like Christ, I went weird and wonderful in some of the things that I did. Some worked an absolute tree and we worked with some amazing customers because of it, but some fell in their absolute arse, right? And I got laughed at a lot. But like letting everybody do that, be creative, let them be who they are, because that's when you're going to get the best out of your people, but that's when you're going to get the best out of actually the customers that you're contacting, the people that you're obviously trying to work with, and the people that you do work with.
Making it safe to fail in essence there as well. Don't be afraid to try.
Totally. And again, like again, laugh at yourself. Like if it happens to you, like just you need to be the biggest clown. You need to be the biggest joker. Like everyone, because that's where they feel safe. Totally. And they feel that if it happens to you, then it's okay if it happens to them.
Got it. Love that one.
And then lastly, I would say, I'd probably say like in terms of like, for me, the biggest thing is like creating plans together, creating targets together, creating, KPIs together, doing it as like a we. Not just that I'm telling you or you're telling me. If we create this together and we're actually talking about this from the beginning to the end, every single time that we speak or we catch up or we talk about it, or if it doesn't happen, from a manager's point of view, it's so much easier to have that conversation if they've created it and they've let themselves down, or they've fallen down, or they have struggled, or whatever it may be. You can have that conversation so much easier, rather than you dictating to someone, and telling them, well, why didn't you do that? Like, that's just horrible. I don't know anyone who would want to be managed like that. So I think making it a we conversation, you bring them into it, you bring them along the journey, and they actually want to do it instead of actually being told to do it.
They fight for you and for themselves, essentially. Yeah, it's a team effort rather than just me versus the company in a way, right? Yeah.
Absolutely
love that. Ciara, like I said, we're pretty much at about time, but real big thank you for that. We've dug into so many interesting things there, from how to start a sales career through to safety and accountability, all the way through to those last 3 lessons. So massive thank you for that. I hope you've enjoyed it. Was it as bad as you thought it might be?
No, I've actually really enjoyed it. It felt like just we were chatting, so that was lovely, and it was probably because you've been a great host. But sorry for waffling and rambling on at points. So I love to chat.
You thought you were bad. Should listen to Donnie yesterday. What I've realised is the more senior you get, the more you like to talk. Which you wouldn't believe trying to sell to senior people, but it is very, very true. They do love a good conversation. But no, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much for that, and I'll catch you soon.
See you soon.